Trump caved. He gave in. Or was it a genius move of 4D chess? There are a lot of pro-Trump personalities saying Trump gave up. He looks terrible. We have this story from Vox. Is the government going to shut down again in February? Here are 4 scenarios. But I also have this other story that we may not get into, but I wanted to point out. Either Trump caves or he is a genius. Right-wing splits after Trump ends shutdown with no wall funding. Look, I am no right-wing person, but I'm just flabbergasted by the constant, the left can only see one thing. Trump bad, everything he does is bad, and at every opportunity they can gloat about something. So of course they're going to claim that Trump caved. I thought Trump would never give up. I thought he was too obstinate. I thought he was too bullish and would be like, I don't care, I'll do whatever I want. I was wrong about that. Wow, that took me by surprise. But I don't think it's so clear to say right now that either Trump caved or he's a genius, and that's why I have this Vox article pulled up. I'm no big fan of Vox, but it's not like everything they do is always bad, just mostly bad. But this is actually a really interesting take. 4 different scenarios they present as to what might actually happen. And this is a more nuanced look. That maybe Trump isn't caving, maybe he isn't a genius, it could be one or the other, it could be both, I don't know, but let's look at the scenarios. The longest government shutdown in U.S. history is almost over, and the federal government will be fully operational again, at least for the next 3 weeks. The relief is temporary. The deal cut by President Donald Trump and congressional leaders to end the shutdown funds several government agencies only through February 15th, with the understanding that Democrats and Republicans will keep searching for a compromise that would give Trump the win he wants on border security while also providing protections for vulnerable migrants as Democrats demand. The next funding cliff is not that far off, and the lesson of the past 2 years has been that it is extremely difficult, maybe impossible, for Democrats and the president to make a deal on immigration. Excuse me. So where will we find ourselves the day after Valentine's Day? Celebrating a Wall for Dreamers deal and the calming of the immigration debate, or on the verge of yet another partial government shutdown so soon after the last one ended? Let's run through the possibilities, starting with the most optimistic and therefore probably least likely scenario. 1. A big, beautiful immigration deal is reached and the fight is over, yet never gonna happen. The Democrats don't care. I think Trump, I'll give you my opinion, right? I think Trump is playing, it's strategy. I wouldn't call Trump a genius. I wouldn't call him an idiot. It's like, you got people who are like, Trump's so dumb, he's more. I'm like, oh, come on, dude. He won the presidency. You don't do that being stupid. But I don't think he's playing 4D chess either. I think he's got a strategy. I think he's got a team. And I think he's operating like many politicians operate. I don't see anything special here. The point is, what was going on? Trump owned the shutdown. It didn't work. Does that mean Trump lost? No, the battle is still going. There are a lot of people who wanted Trump to just push it no matter what, but there were a lot of people who were upset. I know people who work in the federal government who were freaking out. They missed 2 paychecks, and this is huge problems, and it reflected negatively on Trump. It did. It also reflected negatively, for the most part, to a certain extent, on Democrats too, but it seemed like Trump may be getting the brunt of that negativity. Here's what happens. Here's my prediction. Trump announces, okay, we'll reopen government, no deal. 3 weeks. Trump has come to the table a couple times with concessions. Okay, we'll do this for this. Didn't work. Then he says, okay, now he says, we'll reopen government for 3 weeks and we'll come with the deal. When it doesn't work, and it won't, Trump declares a national emergency, gets what he wants. Plain and simple. I think that's likely to be true, but man, was I shocked to see Trump caved at all. I thought he just wouldn't back down, he wouldn't care, but sure enough, he did. And maybe it was the right thing. I honestly don't know. I think what'll happen is Trump's going to say in 3 weeks, listen, I tried to negotiate, you refused. They rejected his deal before he even said it. He was going to go on TV and offer a deal. They rejected it minutes before he even said anything. Okay, they're clearly not interested in negotiating. The Washington Post, I think 2 different editorials, like their literal editorial board, the actual paper, not an op-ed, said, guys, come to the table. So Trump says, you know what, fine, we'll reopen government. In 3 weeks, what can he say? Listen, I offered the Democrats a chance. I tried to negotiate. They refused every step of the way. It's not my fault. It's theirs. And he would be right. If Trump is willing to come to the table and reopen government, you can call him weak. But in the eyes of the public, they're going to say, what more can Trump do? He's literally said, fine, reopen government, and caved. And now the Democrats still won't offer up a deal. Then Trump's going to declare a national emergency, build the wall, and boom, there it is. Well, let's read on. The White House and congressional leaders could find some kind of satisfactory compromise that gives Trump the money he wants for border security while also giving Democrats enough in return to protect vulnerable migrants. In this scenario, an immigration deal is reached, a new spending bill passes before February 15th, and everybody moves on to fight about other issues. There are a lot of good reasons to believe that won't happen. Trump and the Democrats, the two most important parties, have been searching for an immigration trade for more than a year now. The president wants his wall, or at least enough border security funding that he can claim to have gotten the wall, to deliver on his signature campaign promise. Democrats want protections for hundreds of thousands of migrants whose legal status Trump has put at risk. Let me just pause right here, too, and mention, why didn't the Republicans fund the wall before the Democrats took over? In my opinion, there's no excuse for the Republicans. I'm sure they'll give an excuse, but why are we now here? Why does Trump have to concede anything? He had everything. They had all three branches of government. They could have just went, but Trump couldn't get the Republicans on board. Okay, well then it's your own damn fault. How do we end up in this position? I blame the Republicans. Look, I blame the Democrats right now for not coming to the table. Even the Washington Post is willing to admit that. But at some point, you got to say, come on, man, the Republicans had this. Why are we now in this conundrum? The Republicans could have solved it. Scenario 2, no deal, and the government shuts down again. I really don't think this would be the case. I think it's possible, but I think when it comes to the 15th, if there's no deal, Trump's going to be like, emergency, and there you go. I could be wrong on my numbers, but I read this in an article a few days ago on this channel, and I think my understanding is that there's $100 billion set aside for the Department of Defense. That's to be used in emergencies, so it's just unallocated. It's allocated to the DoD, but it doesn't do anything. It's not for anything specific. So if Trump declares an emergency, he can just take whatever $1 billion he wants. And I think what they're saying now is that he wants to take $7 billion out of that fund, which I believe mostly isn't used. So maybe the case. I think there's still a bunch of national emergencies in effect from previous administrations. It gives them tremendous powers. But let's see. Scenario 3. No deal, but the government stays open and Trump declares a border emergency to get his wall. I believe this is what will happen. Okay? I'm not a psychic. I'm not the smartest person on the planet. This is just my hunch. Keeping in mind, I was totally wrong about Trump backing down in any capacity. I thought Trump was going to sit there and just with straw in his mouth with his hands behind his head and say, back off, I'm not going to do it. But no, he did open the government. So he says, Trump has another card to play. He could declare a national emergency in order to circumvent Congress and try to commandeer the federal funding he needs to get his wall. The president alluded to this possibility when announcing the deal Friday to reopen the government for now. If he and Congress can't cut a deal, quote, I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency. In this scenario, the government wouldn't shut down again. Congress could just pass a new spending bill and Trump could sign it, knowing he has his Trump card. Of course, his allies have suggested before, but the immigration fight would escalate in the courts. Trump had been reluctant to actually take the emergency declaration route, though he keeps threatening it, seemingly because enough people have told him it's legally perilous. But it is possible. I'm not interested in Vox's report on the matter. I've seen a bunch of... it is possible. He'd probably get into a fight with the courts. I think he would probably win. Again, not a psychic. Who knows? But others, people with the president ears, are more bullish on Trump's authority to declare such an emergency and win in the courts. Trump might decide that rather than hazard another shutdown and the risky blame game that comes with it, he'll simply keep the government and move his wall fight to a new arena. Scenario 4, no deal. The government stays open and Trump doesn't declare an emergency. Then again, Trump might get cold feet about another shutdown and about making the emergency declaration. There's a lot of risk in both courses. Instead, he could stamp and pout, but ultimately decides to sign another government spending bill and just keep railing against Democrats for being inadequately concerned about, I love how they say the greatly exaggerated crisis. Jesus. Listen, it was the media who repeatedly called it a humanitarian crisis. Now, don't get me wrong, you can call it an exaggeration if you want to say it's a national security crisis, but that's just an opinion. Is it a crisis today? Was it a crisis yesterday? I don't know. That's your opinion. The point is, numerous media outlets called it one. A crisis over and over again. Children, minors, dying. They called it a crisis. Trump adopts language. Now they're calling it exaggerated. Oh, please spare me. That might sound like a long shot given how invested Trump is in the border fight, but that's more or less what just happened. Trump shut down the government to get his wall. Democrats refused to budge. The public blamed Trump, and even his base started to turn against him. So Trump caved and reopened the government without getting any meaningful concessions from Democrats. So here's what I think will happen. Even if Trump doesn't use the national emergency, if Trump refuses to reopen government next time, I think they'll blame the Democrats because Trump gave that, he reopened, right? There's going to be a lot of room for Trump to say, I did this. Why won't they budge? What do you want me to do? The Democrats are refusing to come to the table. And I think at that point, people are going to say, yeah. So this is kind of like Trump's mulligan. There was that famous meeting where Trump was sitting with Pelosi and Schumer, and he said, I'm going to own this one, right? He said, I'm glad to own it, take the credit for it or whatever. And he did. And people were mad at Trump over the shutdown. Now that Trump has reopened government, okay? Now that he said, okay, we've come to an agreement, let's try and work this out. When it comes to the next shutdown, He's not going to own it. He's going to say, no way, no way. I gave you guys your 3 weeks to come up with a deal, and you still refused. How is that my fault? And I think that's what's going to happen. And I think the public will see it the same way. But then again, this is an interesting four different scenarios as put forth by Dylan Scott over at Vox. I think it's interesting, and I think for the most part, it's on point, right? These are 4 interesting scenarios that may or may not come to pass. But I will say it's not like these are the only 4. There's an infinite number of possibilities. It's possibility that Trump, puts on a jetpack and flies to the moon. Like the point I'm saying, very unlikely. But I'm saying we don't know what's going to happen. These are interesting ideas. They're interesting takes. It could be something completely out of left field, and I look forward to finding out. But right now, I do find it interesting. There are so many people who are quick to judge Trump on the matter because nothing's changed. He's just basically gotten federal workers paid, and it's very possible this just starts over again. It's not over yet. We'll see what happens. Thanks for hanging out, guys. More videos tomorrow on the main channel at 4 p.m., on this channel at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 videos starting at 6 p.m., and on my main channel at 4 p.m. Man, I work so much. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out.